Recording.
Good stuff. Okay, let's get started. I am Partha, Lahiri, professor and director of the joint program in survey methodology and a professor in the Department of Mathematics at the University of Maryland, College Park. Welcome, everyone. Let me say a few things about our program, JPSM. You can see the QR code for JPSM here. If you want to know something about JPSM, you can go to the website. But let me briefly introduce JPSM. It's housed in the University of Maryland, College Park. JPSM was established in 1993 to support the US federal statistical system by providing advanced training in survey and data science. Since then, it has become the go-to institution for survey and data science training for private and public sectors. The JPSM, there are three tracks of JPSM, and there are three different programs. The JPSM on-site program, in a unique partnership, brings together faculty from University of Maryland, College Park, the University of Michigan, as well as researchers from Western, a leading survey organization. The on-site program holds classes in a traditional classroom setting on the University of Maryland College Park campus and offers PhD and master's degree program in survey and data science. The Master of Science program has expanded to include three areas of concentration: social science, survey statistics, and data science. The JPSM online program is an international program that provides current and aspiring professionals with industry-specific skill that can be immediately put to use in the workplace. The online program offers a Master of Professional Studies in Survey and Data Science, 3 12-credit graduate certificates in Survey and Methodology, Survey Statistics, and Survey and Data Science, and the opportunity to take just one course as a non-degree seeking student. This is a stackable program where credits can be rolled over and applied to a certificate program or master's program. The JPSM short courses offer additional training for professionals to hone their skills in survey methods and research. Professional staff who feel the need to learn current principles and practices of complex surveys but do not have the time to devote to graduate level courses can find the educational training they need here. The program assumes no previous formal training in survey methodology. So that's about the joint program, three different programs we have. Now, this hybrid webinar, I'm calling it hybrid because we have in-person attendance here in this small seminar room, but we are broadcasting live worldwide. I see there are like about 350 registration for this webinar. This is co-sponsored by International Association of Survey Statisticians, ISS, one of the sections of ISI. And so I'd like to say something about ISS. It's a network of professionals engaging in survey research, ensuring ethical standards, best practices, and mutual sharing of information. There are several objectives of ISS: to promote the study and development of theory and practice of sample surveys and censuses, to maintain and increase interest in surveys and censuses among statisticians, governments, and the public in countries of the world, to promote the modern data ecosystem, provided new data sources, including non-probability surveys that provide granular data, often very timely in comparison with surveys and censuses, to promote modernization of national statistical system through the interoperability of data sources, including surveys and integration of surveys with non-survey data. To achieve objective, we engage in sponsoring invited session, workshops, and conferences on active areas of research. Other activities of ISS, you can go to the website and see this. The survey statistician issued twice a year, including country reports, new and emerging methods, Ask the Expert, Young Survey Statistician, book reviews, and upcoming journal articles and conferences. A program of short courses prior to each ISI WSC, once a statistics congress, and program of invited paper session. Website giving access to the past material, up-to-date information to our monthly newsletter. And we have a nice monthly IS webinar series showcasing distinguished speakers on theory and practice of surveys and censuses. The Cochrane-Hansen Prize, awarded every 2 years for the best paper on survey research methods, submitted by a young statistician from developing country. And then more recently, we have the Hukum Chandra Memorial Prize, awarded every year to a mid-career researcher who has made significant contribution in survey research. And if you're interested in this association, you can be a member and you can get more detailed information about the association from this QR code. With that, I would like to invite Washington Statistical Association, WSS President, Jonathan. We are happy to have you. Please say something about WSS, and then you will be the chair for the rest of the session.
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here in person and to see everybody online. My name again is Jonathan Auerbach. I'm president of the Washington Statistical Society, which is one of the oldest and largest chapters of the American Statistical Association. We're the regional chapter representing the DMV area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C. And what's really exciting about this talk today and seeing all the speakers here is Washington Statistical Society really grew up around the creation of the federal statistical system and the development of statistics. And so as the experts here discuss the next chapter of statistics and data science, that's going to, I think, predict how Washington Statistical Society and the American Statistical Association will evolve over the next 20, 30, 50 years. And so it's a really exciting time. It's also, we have to recognize, in other ways, a very upsetting time, and that statistics, especially in some areas of government, isn't getting the recognition that it deserves. So as I think we look towards the future, we can reflect a little bit on the past, all the developments that have been made, and really statisticians need to own the value they bring in a lot of situations. Washington Statistical Society, I was saying before, is very old. It's celebrating its 100th birthday. If you go back to when the Constitution was created, people organized under the Washington Society well before that. But it's about 100 years old. And so we're planning hopefully some big celebration event next year and the year after. But we do events every year. We do up to a few events a month sometimes. And upcoming soon will be, we're partnering with local universities, including George Mason University, to do Stats Connect, formerly Stats Day, which I believe will be on March 21st. So feel free to, there's, I think, information on the Washington Statistical Society website, watchthat.org, on GMU's website, gmu.edu. So we invite you to look into it and attend. Okay, on to the main event. Really excited here to have Xuming and John and Partha as discussants. So I'm going to introduce everybody, and then I guess we'll start the festivities. So Xuming is the Kotsubi Beckman Distinguished Professor and Inaugural Chair of Statistics and Data Science at Washington University in St. Louis. He's currently the President of the International Statistical Institute and Joint Editor of JRSSB. His research focuses on robust statistics, semi-parametric modeling, Bayesian inference, and adaptive sampling with applications in biosciences, public health, climate studies, and socioeconomic research. Dr. He earned his PhD in statistics from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, UIUC in 1989, and previously held positions in University of Michigan, UIUC, and National University of Singapore, as well as serving as a program director at the Statistics at National Science Foundation. He's an elected fellow of the American Statistical Association for the Advancement in Science, the American Statistical Association, the Institute of Mathematical Statistics, and an elected member of the ISI. His recent honors include the Founders Award, which was bestowed in 2021 from the ASA, the Distinguished Faculty Achievement Award in 2021, as well as a Rackham Distinguished Graduate Mentor Award from the University of Michigan, and the Carver Medal from the IMS for his decades-long contribution to the statistics profession. So, thank you, and I guess I'll introduce the discussants. No, I'll introduce the discussants, I guess, before you guys discuss that. All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan, for your kind introduction. And I'd like to thank everybody for being here in this room, as well as many others joining us online. I hope people online can also hear me well. And if not, I guess you can type message through chat or something that we have for people here monitoring the conversations online. So first of all, I want to start thanking Professor Lahiri for inviting me here. And Partha has been a great contributor to many of the things, not just to the joint program in survey methodology here, but to many parts of the world. In fact, I met him more often in other countries than in the US, where he actually took his time and traveled to different places, giving lectures and interacting with other statisticians, both in academia and also in at least in government official statistics around the world. And it's really people like him who has made us stronger and visible and impactful around the world. So I really want to thank him, not just for inviting me here, but for everything that he has, all the leadership and he has done. So my talk today doesn't connect so directly to survey methodology, but I know in today's world, survey methodology connects to almost every part of statistical research. So hopefully my talk focusing on statistical research will also be relevant to the program here in survey methodology. So here is a little outline for what I'm going to talk about. I will try to reflect on the recent past and to talk about why this is really an exciting time for us as statisticians. And then I will move on to talk about the challenges that our profession actually is facing, particularly the data challenges and also some of the research challenges from my perspective. And I will touch upon a little bit about the community and culture for statistical profession. If time permits, I will say a few things about some of the statistical areas and discussions in terms of whether a model still plays a role in data science in the AI era. And we also talk about some of the really controversial issues in uncertainty and replicability of statistical analysis, including say p-values that a lot of people have doubts these days. So I will go on to see how much time we have, and I will try to cover as much as I can. Now, some of the reflections, some of the things that I'm talking about here actually had roots in this 2019, I think, report. And this was a report grew out of a workshop and many other things that a group of people did, including myself, funded actually by the National Science Foundation. So we gathered a lot of statisticians and data scientists at that time to discuss what were the big challenges and what we should be looking forward to in statistical research. And this particular report, you can find it at the NSF website, as well as many other places, like the ASA website also has this. The title of the report is Statistics at a Crossroads, Who is for the challenge. And obviously this was done before the pandemic, and so what I'm talking about today had started from there, but I have been updating some of the thoughts. I will also mention a recent article, and also especially many discussions for this particular article I co-authored with Xuming at Harvard University. And that article, you can find it online at Harvard Data Science Review with the title of Challenges and Opportunities in Statistical Data Science, 10 Research Areas. Now, together with this particular article, you will also find another article written by computer scientists. I forgot the exact name, but it's also really their article will be talking about 10 research areas from the computer scientist perspective when it comes to data science. We wrote that 2 articles independently. We did not talk to each other. We did not even know the other side when they were writing the article. But if you read it, you will see that there were significant overlaps between those research areas that each side actually came up. So that kind of tells you maybe the community of data science, whether you come from the statistical perspective, whether you come from the computer science perspective, they really kind of converge right now. So to start with the recent past, I will talk about some of the external things, things that related to our discipline, but not directly within the discipline. And we are so lucky that this information, big data and AI era is where statisticians can thrive. We get wider recognition, and a more concrete outcome of that is the students from statistics, right, and data science are finding much more job opportunities, not just in academia, but in industry, in other areas like government and research centers and so on. Now, rankings are a bit controversial, as also they change quite rapidly, actually. I looked it up, the most recent ranking by US News and World Report. At one time, they ranked statistician data scientists even higher, but the most recent ranking put data scientists as number 8 in the top 100 jobs. So it has slipped a little bit over the last few years, but top 10 out of 100 is still really exciting. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States projects double-digit employment growth between 2023 and 2033. And I think their estimates are probably pretty conservative, and maybe a little bit too conservative. Now, if you think back last 10 years, one thing that has been pretty obvious is that worldwide, more schools and departments of statistics and data science have been established, sometimes renamed, but also a lot of new schools and departments coming up. This is a list, a very a partial list of the things that can just give you an idea. Like at Berkeley, just a few years ago, they put together several departments, including statistics, right, to form this computing, data science, and society division. So it's just like a school. And I moved to Washington University in St. Louis less than 2 years ago to start this new department of statistics and data science. By the end of this academic year, we will already have 20 tenure-track faculty in a relatively small university at Washington. We will be one of the larger departments actually on campus. And whether you're looking at Hong Kong or in UK or even in India, many parts of the world, you can see the same phenomenon. So this is obviously great, right? Internally, within our discipline, I'm listing number of classical publications from the field of statistics. I'm not going to go through them, but the idea is that, what is driving statistical research? We can see a lot of great things happening in the last few decades. Whether we are talking about live tables, we're talking about model selection, we are talking about longitudinal data analysis, or we're talking about bootstrap methods, Bayes factors, or False discovery controls, obviously we all know about model selection through lasso and so on. This is just a very small set of the representative work that we can think about. So within our own discipline, great research has been done connecting mathematical theory to new data challenges that we all face in this world. So given that, I want to spend a little more time actually of my presentation today on two major challenges that I see. The first, obviously, is I try to summarize the data challenges now. When I started as a graduate student in statistics, I think that the kind of data we used to see were very simple numerical data that can be summarized in a table or in a few lines, actually. But today, the data can be very, very complex with many different forms. So for example, this graph I borrowed just from an online search. You can see data complexity now come in many different ways, right? Not just big data, not just a lot of data, but the details, the format, the type, right? And also how they are collected vary a lot. So for statisticians, I think if you don't understand how data are collected or how the data you're analyzing actually were collected, then you will be missing the boat. I don't think you can do the right statistical analysis without knowing that. And that level of complexity is a challenge for at least people like me who were trained when data were much simpler. And the second thing I think is also very important for people who do statistical research is to understand that very often in our training, in our theoretical research, we assume the data we have form a representative sample of the population of interest. But that's typically not true in the kind of data that we actually work with. Now, in certain areas, still true. Okay, certain areas you have a well-designed experiment, a well-designed survey, maybe even with a well-designed survey, I think that you have other challenges. But sometimes you do have a representative sample, but most of the time it is not. And one example will be health records, right? This is something that comes up quite a lot. Just in health records, we have, electronic health records from hospitals. We have administrative data from CDC, for example. I hope CDC will continue to work. We have claim data from health insurance companies, surveys related to health, and also, of course, clinical trial data. They all bring us different type of data. And in most cases, as you see, you may not have a representative sample that you can work with. So these are really, I think, a lot of challenges going on for us. Move on a little bit, I will say that another challenge that people have is that data are usually so big and so complex and coming from different sources, they are not in the same location. Partly because the data can be very big, partly because of confidentiality issues. Right? People may not want to share data with you. So if you are analyzing data that are actually not in the same location, not in your own server, it creates new challenges. And the data generation mechanisms, which is probably related to the complexity I was talking about at the beginning, the data generation mechanisms also vary a lot these days. And I will use the COVID-19 data as an example because even though I think we hopefully have passed that difficult and challenging time, but we still remember what happened, right? At that time, people knew that data were very important, right, to combat the pandemic. But even some of the very kind of routine data collection and reporting and normalization were not that obvious. Right? We all, for example, talk about confirmed probable cases. You remember when somebody is tested positive for for COVID. Now, even that standard varies from country to country. I knew somebody who, were tested negative in Canada and went to China and tested positive based on exactly the same results, because people define whether you are COVID positive or not differently. We have, hospitalization data, mobile tracking. This was actually quite commonly used at that time. And all these things, we talk about data normalization, standardization, right? Selection bias. And also a lot of countries or maybe areas, communities, hesitate to report data fully and accurately for many different reasons. And this is another level of challenge that we have. We have data when we really need the data to guide us for decision making, for policy making, but it's not a straightforward thing that you can get the data you want. Well, data privacy, I already mentioned a little bit when we talk about data being distributed more and more. And data privacy has become a real big issue, right? It's not just within the country. Now, international collaborations require data to be shared across countries, but that's a big challenge. Every country wants to protect their own data. Even within the country, industries, usually corporations, usually are unwilling to share their data, of course, sometimes for good reasons. Even academic researchers are often hesitant to share their data. Right? Again, sometimes for very good reasons. So the question is, can you address those challenges with better statistical research tools so that maybe even if you don't share the data completely, we can still do a very good analysis. And last but certainly not the least data challenge here that I'm going to talk about is we rely more and more on data-driven algorithms today. But those algorithms, or you can think of them as artificial intelligence tools, they inherit the kind of bias that you may already have in the data. Because machines don't think very much in terms of whether you have a representative sample or not. And data-driven algorithms generate bias that are often unknown to the users of those algorithms or AI platforms. So this is, I feel like statisticians really have the obligation to make sure that people understand that. Yes, machines can be very powerful. They can do a lot of great things, but you must understand all the potential problems, including the bias that is inherent in those algorithms. I shouldn't say the algorithms are biased. The algorithms may not be biased, but the data that feeding into the algorithm to train whatever is going on could be biased. You probably still remember, many of you might remember this example, when Apple very enthusiastically came up with this new credit card online. People can apply with just, you can apply for a credit card online in a few seconds and you get either approval or decline of this Apple credit card. And very soon people found out that the two people with nearly identical features, one male, one female, applied for the credit card, and one got instant approval, the other got rejection. And that story alone triggered a whole lot of discussions. And I think Apple, within a few days, stopped this whole thing and updated their AI-driven approval process for credit card applications. But that's this kind of example telling you how even powerful companies like Apple, and with very smart people behind it, they were not fully aware of the algorithm bias that I was talking about earlier. So this is a kind of a list of data challenges that I'm going to touch upon very, very briefly, and obviously there are many others. And I'm hoping that later on in the discussions, and we can see more. So even with this list, I feel like we statisticians have great opportunities. There are still many, many things that we need to work on. And the world needs us actually to ensure that data-driven decision-making is done right. So my main focus is statistics research, right, in this new era. And there are many, many very important emerging research areas I can talk about, but I will try to focus on 6 or so that I also find both important, interesting, and there are also many opportunities for young generations of statisticians in research. The first research challenge that I see is that we already recognize data heterogeneity. And data heterogeneity needs new and powerful statistical tools so that we can get the most out of it. And data heterogeneity is everywhere, whether we're talking about precision medicine, whether we're talking about personal learning in the education setting, for example, and all these recommender systems like Netflix, if you want to watch a movie, or if you want to search for a restaurant, where to go to find your favorite restaurant, and then there are online tools that can recommend where you go, right? And the subgroup analysis. This is where people recognize that even in a population that you might not think otherwise, you can actually identify certain subgroups of people who respond to specific treatments or recommendations very differently. And their risk profile, for example, might be very different. And recognizing that will allow us to do much better analysis and decision making. So simply put, that the data heterogeneity basically says you cannot treat the whole population as just a homogeneous population. You have to think about different characteristics associated with different parts of the population. Now, of course, you usually don't know in advance how these subpopulations or what type of heterogeneity is actually present in the data that you have. The second challenge here is that people in traditional statistics research think about developing optimal procedures. And this is what, when I was a graduate student, almost everything I learned was talk about, okay, how to optimize this and that, right? How to develop the most statistically efficient estimator for a particular parameter, how to construct the most powerful test for a given hypothesis for statistical model, and things like that. But these days, I think people start to recognize that optimality in a single dimension is usually not the best thing. We all know that if you try to focus too much on a single dimension, yes, you might be able to optimize that dimension, but then lose other things. Life is complex, a multidimensional world, and we need to think multidimensional. So some of the dimensions, as you can see, I listed here, including computational resources. You don't just think about coming up with a wonderful, efficient statistical procedure, but if it's computationally very costly, probably nobody can use that. We also have data privacy issues, right? If you cannot use the full data in your algorithm or in your procedure, then you have to think about how you optimize the statistical procedure. Also, human time in collecting data, cleaning data, and many other things. And data often come with measurement errors that kind of not just IID noise adding to the observations you see. So coming up with a new statistical procedure that optimize in multi-dimensions, which here I'm considering, for example, as an example, constrained efficiency will be a new challenge. Can you find the most efficient statistical procedure given the other constraints that you need to obey? All these things, it's easy to think about it, but it's difficult to put it in a very general framework to come up with theory and methodology to implement. So a lot of time people will start with a very concrete problem, think about, okay, I want more statistical efficiency. But for this particular problem, maybe the main thing is the privacy issues. Main things, maybe data have to be either perturbed or I'm using synthetic data, under those scenarios, or the data are distributed across different sites, within that framework, how can we develop the best statistical procedure? The third point that I have been very much personally interested in recent years is what I consider to be data-driven inference. Now, statistical inference is still the core of what we do as statisticians. But the traditional, or I now consider to be as a classical inference, is model-based. If you all still remember, right, how do we do statistical inference? For example, whether it's hypothesis testing or whether you want to construct a confidence interval, do those more traditional inferential tasks. Typically, we need a parameter of interest. We also say in our elementary introductory statistics classes that that's a parameter of interest associated with a particular population or particular probability model. Then you have to appropriately choose a model, right? And these two steps have to be done before you actually see the data. I hope you agree with me, right? If you apply the classical statistical tools, you have to have the parameter of interest and you have the model given to you before you see the data. Then you collect data, or somebody give you data. Then you perform statistical inference. And this is what now I consider to be those model-based or classical inference. If you don't follow this paradigm, then the classical statistical inferential tools might not be appropriate. It might give you wrong answers. But more and more often, people are not following this paradigm, performing data analysis these days. Very often, people do data-driven inference. And that really means you start with data, rather than starting with thinking about, which parameter of interest, what population model, probability model that I'm going to use for the population. You start with data. And then the data guide you for a particular model. You choose a model based on the data. Once you have the model, then you choose a parameter of interest. Of course, hopefully that parameter of interest also explains something or relates to something that you are really interested in. If you take that route, the classical statistical methods really don't apply anymore. At least they won't produce the right, for example, like the p-value. So this is basically the idea of using the same data or using old data to do statistical inference after you have used the data to choose a model and decide on a parameter of interest. And that is what I consider data-driven inference. Whether you like it or not, I think this is being done very frequently in practice. And we should not shy away from it. I think we can develop the appropriate statistical tools for this type of data analysis that people actually are doing. If you don't do it properly, we know that there are a lot of pitfalls, right? And this example that I'm putting up here was an old example. This was back in 1995 when people in School of Public Health actually came up with a research analysis and claiming that pita and spaghetti sauce can protect against prostate cancer. Nothing wrong with the statistics or the statistical tests performed there. But what was wrong actually was the way the whole data collection and experimental design and statistical analysis were putting together. And if you dig a little bit deeper, the story was that this was a study of more than 40,000 men for a period of over 6 years, which is not an insignificant study. And those researchers examined 130 types of food intakes to see which one contributes to prevention of prostate cancer. And these authors reported some of the p-values they found. So pita and spaghetti sauce. Now, well, I know we all have learned enough statistics that we know that if you do this, you are doomed to fail from time, quite often, maybe not all the time, but quite often. And this is what I would say, selective reporting. I'm not claiming people are cheating or doing anything unethical. It's just like if you don't recognize the risk of selective reporting, you'll be wrong. So the first three research challenges I was talking about: data heterogeneity, multidimensional way of thinking in terms of aiming for optimal procedures, and we also have to develop the right procedures for data-driven inference. At the same time, we also need to educate the researchers outside our own discipline. I think that's probably at least equally important compared to our own research, right? We need to educate people outside our own discipline that selective reporting is really, really dangerous. But at the same time, we need to come up with useful and effective tools to do that when people are looking at the many, many hypotheses. People are collecting data to guide them to select models and all that. This is what I consider to be data-driven inference. We need to provide people with the right tool that people can use without having to do their own research. There are many more. I said I should talk about at least 6 of them, so I will move on to the next research challenge is data structure. Well, this is because that we are seeing data in very complex forms these days. So when we do statistical analysis, we do not simply want to convert whatever data you have into a long vector or a data table or a data matrix, right? Because that will not be an efficient way or powerful way of doing data analysis. So if you know the data takes certain forms, have certain structures, you need to take those structures into account when you process the data and model the data. And there are a lot of examples like that. Those relational data, right? That these days people talk about graphs, people talk about networks. There's actually a pretty growing, big and growing sub-community, for example, for network data analysis these days. The spatial temporal data that come up a lot. For example, in climate research, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., climate research is still very important, right? And public health research, right? All these spatial temporal data, they often have structures. Text data, right? Especially, when you deal with multiple languages, some kind of structural information becomes also very useful. We'll also talk about dynamic systems. So when data are not simply a vector or a data table, how do you take the structure inherent in the kind of data you observe or have in your modeling analysis stage? And that's, I think, posing a lot of challenges for statisticians. So we often do not have very kind of a good recipe for other people to follow in those cases. But in order to come up with a good recipe for other people, we first have to do a lot of research to understand what we can do first. Now, causal inference is another really big area, and I must admit, 30 years ago, I did not believe causal inference was possible unless you have controlled experiment. Now, in some way, I still believe that, but I also recognize that causal inference is valuable, even for data coming from other sources. So the causal inference field, a lot of research is being done, not just in statistics, but in some other areas as well, right? You can see a lot of applications in public health and biomedical research, and also if you talk to social scientists, they seem to use causal inference even more than we do in statistics. Whether they are doing right, it's a question that we can ask, and I think to do things right often requires close collaborations between domain scientists and statisticians. And the many issues actually involving causal inference, right? We teach our students from the very beginning, right? What was the well-known phrases like, correlation is not causation. Obviously, that's correct. I think it's still correct today. Okay. But if we stop right there, then we're not doing a great job. We should say, yes, correlation is not causation. But then the question is, what can you do with correlation? What can you do with data that are actually not well designed from a controlled experiment perspective? So this has opened up a lot of new research in causal inference area, even within our own field of statistics. We also need to think about integration of evidence of causality from different type of sources, because a single source might not say too much, might not give you a very strong evidence of causality, but if you have multiple sources, different type of evidence putting together, integration of them would lead to something with stronger evidence of causality. I know people often complain that whatever causal inference you do, you need a lot of assumptions, right? So people can say, okay, this is what the causal effect will be if you assume A, B, and C. And A, B, C are not necessarily testable. People can debate about whether they are reasonable or not. But at least understanding that whole structure will help. So right interpretation of causal estimation, causal inference is important, because it's not, if you have complicated data sources, whatever causal inference you do will be different from the kind of causal inference you desire, right, if you were dealing with a controlled experiment. But doing all the theory, doing all the research will help us understand under what circumstances, under what conditions, what would happen, how would you quantify them. And I think this step is highly valuable. Of course, there are a lot of other tools that people have come up with, like the causal experimental devices for inference. It's kind of maybe the next best thing to randomize experiments. We should also tell people the limitations of causal inference from observational studies in a more positive way, I feel like, rather than just telling people correlation is not causation. So this is, again, to me, I feel like there's a challenge for statisticians. How can we do it right so that what we do in causal inference become very useful, valuable for people who want to do analysis like that. But at the same time, we are telling people, what you can get, what you cannot get. The next point is related to machine learning. I don't know how people think about machine learning. Is machine learning part of statistics? Obviously, yes. But machine learning also goes beyond statistics, right? There are other communities, research communities included. They do a lot of machine learning research. However, we also recognize that machine learning sometimes moves in the direction of a black box. Sometimes people just call it black box, and mainly because the model complexity for machine learning has been increasing, I would say, exponentially. Now, in this graph, this is a graph that I actually obtained a few years back. This was telling you the model size that people actually use in the AI machine learning field over the, this is roughly from 2018. So it's not very long history. So you can see this is the vertical scale is actually the number of parameters that you have in the large models. And even by 2020, this is where this graph ended, 2020, we have already seen large neural network models with 17 billion parameters. But remember, this is only 2020. If you look it up today, for example, the Google Brain, people remember how many parameters they have? Hundreds of trillions of parameters. So I was not lying for exponential growth. Even just like the last couple of years, the number of parameters has been growing. Partly, of course, due to better and better computer power, right? And also partly because we have more and more data. So more and more data, really big data, very powerful computers together, they marry to produce larger and larger models, or at least make us can afford, we can afford larger and larger models. But obviously there will be a limit. This path, the model complexity, there will be a limit. And I don't know whether we are already near the limit or not, but we might be. So how do statisticians contribute to this field? There are many ways, and one way I feel like is what now I'm calling interpretable or maybe explainable machine learning methods. That maybe you want to think about. Yes, you can have a big model, but let's think about how you can use much smaller, simpler model to explain what's going on. This is not to say anything negative about these large models. I mean, larger and larger models have a role to play. They are really bringing us a lot of good results. But those models, those larger and larger models, have primary goals or classification, prediction, or personalized recommendation. So if you don't care whether it's a black box or not, I just want to know what's going to happen this afternoon in this area. Is it going to rain? If that's all I need to know. I don't care what drives the changes in local weather. You can use big model to do that, and people are doing it more and more successfully these days. And interpretable machine learning will help us think about how do we understand things better. Because by understanding things better, case by case, gradually we will be able to develop a much better understanding of what's going on. We also need to emphasize stability and robustness. So in some of the machine learning research literature, how do they demonstrate whether something is successful? They just need to demonstrate it on one data set, on one application. Of course, if all you care about is that particular application, or all you care about is whether I just want to know whether it's going to rain this afternoon here, then if you are successful, you are successful. But we often need to go much beyond that. We want to make sure that whatever we see is generalizable, right? The principles are generalizable that will help scientific research move forward. So that requires more stability and robustness in the kind of machine learning we do. We also need to recognize uncertainty quantification is not always needed, but very often needed. Sometimes people will tell me, well, with so much data, why do I care about uncertainty? If I can build a model with trillion parameters, there's no uncertainty anymore. That's usually not true. That's usually not true. And very often, interpretable machine learning will help us think about how to more effectively collect future data to help us or to guide us to better. So to simplify the story a little bit, the next page is going to be non-scientific. Okay? I'm just trying to simplify the whole procedure is to think about what interpretable machine learning can do. Or I start with the bottom, which is the world that can be very complicated. And then we have data. Then we have a black box model, which can be a very large model. After that, we may want to fit what we get with a very simple linear regression. Y equals alpha plus beta x. Or maybe it's a very simple tree. Maybe you have a couple of different covariates that they are so inferential, then if you split based on some of these covariates, we can get a very simple tree. So these are simply some of the things that we can understand very well. Now, if you use these very simple models, you're not going to achieve the same prediction or forecasting accuracy as the original big model, but they can often help us understand things, what's going on, and sometimes get more generalizable and more robust conclusions. And so in this kind of cartoon, basically it says, oh, these simple models at least can communicate with humans, so humans can understand what's going on. So if we can do the right research to help us understand how these interpretable machine learning models can be used in the whole kind of data processing ecosystem, we're good shape. And if there's at least one area where statisticians can contribute, and we often have the right tools to do that. Why would that even be necessary sometimes? Well, there are a lot of also examples that show you if you blindly trust what a complex system recommends to you, you might be in trouble. Now, here I often talk about different type of problems that we face. I often think about, there are data-driven decision-making processes that we face. Some of them I consider to be of low-stakes decisions, right? Some high-stakes decisions. If it's a low-stakes decision, like whether it's going to rain this afternoon, maybe I need to be prepared. Maybe I need to bring an umbrella if there's a high chance of raining. But even if I made a wrong decision, I didn't bring an umbrella, the cost is there, but not that great. I may be able to borrow an umbrella from somebody here. But there are high-stake decision-making, right? Whether you want your doctor to operate, do something in your brain, or do an open heart surgery, or whether you want to fly the airplane through a particular area under particular weather conditions. If something goes wrong, we're talking about life and death. So there's a low stake and high stake decision making, and I would say at least for high stakes decision making, just a black box is not going to be convincing, because sometimes it can be wrong, and then you suffer very grave consequences. And this early example of IBM Watson for oncology, this was a very highly visible program. I think the program is still out there. It was a very highly visible program. They trained their supercomputer to tell us, to recommend treatments for cancer. And it turned out that at least at the very beginning, the IBM Watson supercomputer was recommending very unsafe cancer treatments. Now, once you understand what was wrong, then you can always improve the system. But to understand what was wrong, what was right, even before the system was released, I think the interpretable machine learning, the kind of thing I was talking about, will be very helpful. So we probably need to keep that in mind and start. Don't wait until something was really wrong and then try to fix it. But if you have the foundational research ready, large models, great. But at the same time, if you can understand what's going on, that will be better. So these are the 6 research challenges I have discussed so far. I know this is a very small list of many of the research challenges we face today. For example, recently I added this to my presentation here. Is called the use of synthetic data. Because for privacy protection, what you should do is actually unclear. When you cannot share the full data, you have to think about how you can protect the data. But at the same time, people can still use your data to arrive at good decisions. So I think I may have time to talk about this, the 7th research challenge. Now people have come to realize that synthetic data can be very useful. Now, obviously, there's a question of how you generate synthetic data. I'm not going to really talk about how you generate synthetic data, and that's another research question. Because the synthetic data need to look just like the real data, or carry all the useful features of the real data without revealing individual observations. Right? Synthetic data actually become very common, and there was some estimate pointing out that currently, if you search for data in public domain, already a very non-significant percentage of data were actually synthetic data, maybe 15% today. But this percentage is growing very quickly. And some people predicted that within 10 years, more than half of the data you will see are synthetic data, not real data. And sometimes you may not realize that. You may not realize that. So people have started to worry about this. Say, is that going to cause any problems? And this, Nature article in July of last year created a lot of, or drew a lot of attention, I would say. And those people pointed out that if you always use synthetic data to train AI models, the AI models can be trained iteratively, right? If you keep doing or retraining the AI models, just using more and more synthetic data, eventually the model will collapse. So that's another warning that, yes, we can use synthetic data for many good reasons, but you cannot go too far in that direction. But this is not all bad news. It turns out that I recently came across some of the research done also by some of our statisticians, including Appleton and David Donohoe. Appleton was a PhD student of David Donohoe. They argue that you can avoid this model collapse phenomenon if you don't always just use synthetic data. If you use synthetic data, you keep training the model, but adding certain part of the real data. So it's a hybrid thing. If the majority of data is still synthetic data, but every time you add a little bit of real data to train the model, then you will avoid this model collapse phenomenon. And how much real data you need, how much synthetic data you allow, there are some very interesting and very guidelines. So this is, again, I think, a kind of a great area for statistical research. We want to think about our statistical research that actually can help address some of the big AI questions these days. So I'm going to skip some of the many other things that I included here, and many other research challenges that you can think of. But come to maybe spend a couple of minutes here to talk about a research community in statistics. One thing that I felt quite strongly is that because our discipline, statistics, right, kind of grew out of a more mathematical tradition. And we often focus a lot on theory. Here, theory, I meant mathematical theory. So theory, I realize that theory means different things to different people. Like when I was talking to my colleagues in political science, when they say theory, very theoretical or methodological, they meant very different things, okay? So here I'm talking about theory from our perspective, it's more mathematical theory. I feel like we emphasize very much on mathematical theory, sometimes too much. I'm not saying mathematical theory is not needed anymore. We definitely need a mathematical theory, but we cannot only focus on that. We cannot only do theory for the theory's sake. We need to use the theoretical tools to help us address problems that have the practical relevance. That's the main point. Also, we need more people in our profession to build bridges. So we actually have, very often we have, even starting out with our PhD students, we often sit within our small office, maybe talk to a couple of people, your colleagues or friends, and that's all you do. And then you write a thesis or write a journal article on a very particular area of research. Well, that's again still highly valuable. We still have to do that, but somehow our profession needs to grow a bit wider and broader, and we need more people to build bridges, to talk to people outside our own field. And of course, that includes having people more heavily embedded in domain science. Right? We need people, I feel like we need statisticians who are specialized in domain X. And those people need to get recognition and respect so that more people will be pursuing those careers. And doing that can help our profession grow in a more healthy way. And also we need more partners in public and the private sectors. Now that's becomes even more important as, for example, when federal research funding is at stake, maybe our research needs to connect more with private sectors. Something that I was just thinking about given the current environment. And we need partnership. We cannot be on our own. And we need leadership, especially in the data science era. We cannot sit back, just let other people tell us what we should do, and we need to get together and take leadership, have our public voice, talk to people in government, in private sectors, in academia. And we also need to think about how we can mentor a new generation of statisticians. I come to realize this is actually a very challenging job, because very often we have to convince our colleagues who have been learning statistics, teaching statistics, doing statistical research for many, many years in a particular way. And I feel like the new world requires us to take a very different approach to statistical, in teaching, education, graduate student mentoring. So that way, the next generation of statisticians will have a very different type of profile and skill sets than people my generation actually had. If they are learning the same thing that I was learning 30 years ago or longer, then I think we're not doing the right thing. But I understand it's often very challenging in universities across the US and maybe around the world. And we also need to think about more statistical capacity development in developing countries, where more people need to understand what data can do for them. Right? Data literacy, I would say data literacy, computing literacy, or statistical literacy, let's do something that requires our collective efforts. In some part of the world, like in the United States, I think that there are a lot of people doing that, but worldwide, there really is a great need for people to contribute in statistical capacity. Okay, so let me check my time. I think it's almost time. So I will just say very quickly about one thing that I have prepared here. It's about the role of models. I started by saying early on that statistical inference is model-based, right? But it's actually even more than that. We rely on models a lot. And sometimes we get criticized also by people from outside our field and say, okay, model-based data analysis, decision-making seems to be out of date, because why do we believe in those models that you're using? So I just want to say a few words about that. Hopefully they will open up more discussions later on. When I say model-based, I really mean those probabilistic models, right? And also model-based analysis includes some structural relationships. I'm going to say linear regression, it's a linear structure, it's a linear relationship. Do we believe in all these models that we are using for statistical analysis? Well, the answer is yes and no. And we all know that, starts from this famous quote. I don't know where the quote actually came from. I couldn't find the original source. If you know that, let me know. I think it was attributed to George Box, right? All models are wrong, but some models are useful. So far I haven't been able to find the original source to say exactly that, but I know he did say something to that effect, so that now he has been frequently quoted saying that. John von Neumann, even in 1947, also said the truth is much too complicated to allow anything but approximations. So actually, historically, we all know that, yes, we use models, but we understand the models are approximations. But I don't think that's enough. Models are approximations, but they could be good or poor approximations. Right? So just saying models are approximations, and maybe some are good approximations, it's not good. Models have other important roles to play in statistical research. For example, simple models can help us test new ideas. But without simple models, without adding additional structure, assumptions into a theoretical or research framework, you may not be able to understand the new ideas quickly or test new ideas and new methods. Those models can be useful. And models can also integrate expert opinions into data. We believe in data, we rely on data to do many things, but data alone, I think, are are not sufficient in any of the decision-making process. We need human intelligence, expert opinions, prior knowledge, if you think in the Bayesian framework, right? How you integrate all these things. I think models can play big roles. And I want to use just this very, very simple example to end my presentation. Model parameters are often interpretable even when models are wrong. Right? And this is a point that we often miss. Just two very, very quick examples. We use linear models. Y equals x beta plus noise. We use it a lot. The coefficient beta is meaningful, interpretable, even for nonlinear models. I mean, for example, if you have a link function which is unknown to link between x beta and y, then this beta is interpretable. But even more broader than that is if you think about rate of change, if you average rate of change over a covariate value, those linear regression coefficients can be interpretable. Of course, you have to formulate things a little bit better in that case. Another very well-known statistical model is proportional hazard model, which often, when people do Cox regression, then you often do this proportional hazard model for analysis of sensor data. This is probably one of the most popular statistical models in biostatistics and biomedical research. And then you have this coefficient beta again. Okay, on my slides is B. This coefficient of beta relates to hazard, right? Hazard ratio. This parameter is actually interpretable without assuming that proportional hazard model actually holds. And this log hazard ratio, if you don't have this model holding exactly, this is some kind of weighted average of log hazard ratio. And that's interpretable if you can understand it and present it right. So one point I'm making here is, yes, statisticians use models a lot, not just because they are good approximations of reality. Sometimes they may not be good approximations, depending on what you mean by good. But models have a lot of other roles they can play. And we need to understand and make sure that others also understand what's going on. So I think I will stop right here because of time constraints, and I'll be happy to hear our discussants and also hear from you, and also any questions or comments for people from people joining us online. I will be certainly happy to answer some of those later. Thank you.
Great, what a fantastic, comprehensive view of the situation. It's my pleasure to next invite John Stufken up to discuss. Dr. John Stufken is a professor of statistics at George Mason University, where he also serves as associate chair for research. Previously, he held positions at UNC Greensboro, Arizona State University, and University of Georgia and Iowa State University, and was a program director at the National Science Foundation. His research focuses on experimental design, big data subsampling, and statistical analysis. He has co-authored Orthogonal Arrays, Theory and Applications, and co-edited the Handbook of Design and Analysis of Experiments. He has served as editor or associate editor for major statistical journals, including Statistica Seneca, the American Statistician, and the Journal of Statistical Planning and Inference. Stufken is an elected fellow of the American Statistical Association and the Institute of Mathematical Statistics, and a member of the International Statistical Institute. He was also a Rothschild Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Isaac Newton Institute for Mathematical Sciences.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to the Washington Statistical Society. Also, thank you to Partha for organizing this event. And thank you for Xuming to giving a fantastic presentation, which I think covers a lot of interesting aspects of the challenges that lie ahead of us, both in terms of research, but also I think in terms of changes that perhaps we need to make within the profession in order to take advantage of of the opportunities that exist. So in this discussion, I will emphasize some of the research challenges, or maybe re-emphasize some of the research challenges and opportunities that Xuming already discussed. And then we'll talk about some potential barriers that lie ahead of us if we want to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. So in terms of research challenges, I think one thing that's important for us is to work on problems that matter. And not just matter to us in statistics, but matter to people outside of statistics, right? That have an impact on society, that are of great interest to a lot of people. And so some of that is obviously going on, but there is also a lot of work that's being done where that doesn't fit under that umbrella. And it's okay that that's being done, but as a profession, we need to be involved in major problems and have an impact there. And I think we can do better than what we're doing right now. So one thing that is needed then is collaboration. Is absolutely important. Collaboration with subject matter experts in academia and industry and government, because as statisticians, we often don't know the details and the finer things of the problems that are being studied, and the input from experts is really critical there, so that we're not working on problems that don't matter to the practical solutions, but that we are working on problems that matter for the practical solutions. And of course, we need to collaborate with computer scientists and applied mathematicians and other people who build tools and who have knowledge that we as statisticians may not always have. It also means that we need to attend conferences other than statistics conferences and plan our work at those conferences and talk about the impact and the differences that this work makes. So in terms of the research challenges, I would divide it into different categories. So I would say one is data strategies. And Xuming has talked a lot about this already, it's about some of these aspects. But let's just try to re-emphasize a few of it. And these are all areas, I think, where statistics is uniquely qualified to make contributions, because these are areas of strength for statisticians. And one that Xuming mentioned already is data collection. And there are many challenges because we are dealing with new problems and much more complex data than in the past. But in principle, it's not really different from what is already the case for a long time. Even when I was a young statistician, and that's many years ago, I talked to people who were doing consulting type work, and the type of things that always irritated them is that people would come to them with a data set and say, okay, here's the data, what can I do with this data? It didn't come before the data had to be collected. Right? So I think that's really important that we are involved in that process. And otherwise you get data that people hope to get a lot of conclusions from, and you can't draw any conclusions from it because there are problems with how the data was collected. So I think that's a very important aspect. Blended data is another important aspect of the data strategies. I think if you have data that comes from different sources that has been collected at different times that may target different populations, how can you combine some of that data and draw inferences that use all of the data that's available to you, rather than use just data from one source? And for example, in survey sampling, that's one of the problems that people are addressing right now. Also, how can you draw conclusions from different surveys and bring those together and come up with stronger conclusions that with more reliable conclusions than you could from just looking at one of those surveys. Data privacy, security, and sharing, those are issues that statisticians are involved in, and there are, as Xuming also explained already, there are many problems, additional problems that we need to be involved in, whether it's healthcare data, whether it's financial data, whether it's data on government, whether it's privacy protection that Xuming already discussed. Those are important issues, I think, for us statisticians to be involved in. Um, Data is very complex. Lots and lots of variables are being collected. You also have some data dimension reduction ideas and feature selection ideas, not just for high dimensional data, but for ultra high dimensional data. And methods that worked in the past for the smaller data sets that we work with, they don't work anymore for these larger data sets. So it's important to come up with new ideas. Ideally in the context, again, of important problems where we can make a difference. One other item I would say is, so we talk about dimension reduction, we talk about a large number of variables or features that we have. The data sets are also large in terms of the number of observations that are being collected. And it's not always clear that you need all of those observations to come up with reasonable conclusions. So subsampling of the observations that are being collected and drawing conclusions based on that is another direction that is important for statisticians to be involved in. This is also a problem that people in computer science work on, but statisticians have a lot to contribute to that problem as well. It's also relevant if you talk about labeling of data. Sometimes you have data where you have the features available to you, but you have to make a decision for which of those different combinations of features you're actually going to find the response variable. And if the response variable is very costly to obtain, you can't do it for all of those combinations. You can only do it for some of them. And the question is, for which one are you going to do it? Right. And so those are problems that are of great interest in many different applications. Xuming talked extensively about models and the traditional approach in statistics, a model-based approach, rather than an approach driven by data. Still, the models I think are important, and interpretable models are definitely important rather than the black boxes, as Xuming talked about extensively. Explainability of the output related to the interpretable models, but still a slightly different issue. Causality, uncertainty quantification, not only for AI, but in many different problems as well. Digital twins is another area where statisticians can make great contributions, kind of combining data strategy and model building. But let me also talk, and I'll try to spend a little bit more time on this, on the potential barriers that lie ahead of us. I guess the first question I would ask is statistics perhaps too slow to adapt to new developments? I think in the past, I would say the answer is yes. I'm not sure that we have really changed in that regard. So I think the answer is still yes, we are too slow, and because of that, we're kind of always behind. And we're not leaders, but we're followers. And I think that's a culture that has to change. And again, it doesn't apply to everybody. I mean, there are people who are at the front of the new developments, but as a field, as a discipline, I think we are typically a little bit behind. At the past JSM, if you listen, you hear statisticians talk about AI, for example. Well, it's just another fad, or it's overhyped. And some of that is perhaps true. There's a kernel of truth in that, but it's nevertheless a very important area to be involved in. And so if you use this type of thinking, and I'm not saying that the majority of people do, but if you use this type of thinking, then we will always be behind. So we have to be involved in it. The workforce issue, in Xuming's presentation, he talked about the need for more people to build bridges and too few statisticians embedded in science and other subject matters. Yes, I completely agree with that. And what it means is that there is a need for more of us, right? I mean, because that's, I think, is a critical problem, that our community is too small. There's just not enough people who are interested in coming to statistics these days. At my university, if you look at computer science, it's booming. There are attracting tons and tons of students. If you look at statistics, it's high school research, nearly as much. Far fewer students that come to statistics. So I think we need to change something in that. We need to make sure that we attract more people. And I don't have the answers as to how to do that exactly, but I'll say a little bit more about that in one of the next slides, I think. But definitely we need to change things. So training the next generation. So if you want to be involved in interdisciplinary research, because obviously we need to train people in that arena, and also make sure that they know enough about coding and algorithms. They don't have to become computer scientists, but they need to be very proficient in terms of coding and algorithms. At the same time, we need to teach them still the basic statistical ideas, including theory of statistics. And so I think we need to rethink that. I mean, there are different places that have made these changes already. Right? We haven't done anything, but there are also a lot of universities where not that many changes have taken place. Undergraduate level, some of the programs are still rather traditional programs, and the changes are not as much as they should be, and that makes it difficult to attract students, of course, right? And if you don't have attractive programs, then you're not going to attract good students. They'll go elsewhere. We also need to train others. I think we want to work with people. It's important that those people also have at least some of the basic ideas from statistics, for example, about data collection. That you don't go out and just collect a bunch of data and then come and say, okay, what can I do with this data? We did talk about a few things here that I've encountered on my own campus. So I guess for a statistician, I mean, artificial intelligence is part of data science, right? It's based on lots of data, large language models, et cetera. I'm not sure that's true for everybody outside of statistics. At my campus, I guess there was an emphasis at one time on building up data science. That has been put aside because now the buzzword is AI, right? And so that becomes the focus now. And again, if we're not at the forefront of when some of these developments happen, then we're going to be too late. So on my campus, building up data science is going to be really a challenge. And I don't think that my campus is an exception to many other campuses, but that's true as well. Xuming talked about departments of statistics and data science. That too is in some campuses a challenge. There are many departments that have changed their name from statistics to statistics and data science, but there are also many places where that is not possible. And my campus is one of those where we wanted to do this, but couldn't do it because of existence of other programs and departments on campus. So there are challenges there. Schools of data science, they're wonderful. They can bring people together from different areas, work on data science, extremely important. There are many campuses where statistics are not heavily involved in the School of Data Science. They may teach one class or two classes, but that's about it. And the schools of data science are in many campuses run by others than statisticians. And so that also, I think, is a challenge for us to be a major player in this arena. Some final remarks. I'm sure there's no intent of bringing this as a message that everybody needs to work in these types of problems. There are some problems from the old days that are still important. There are small data sets, there are less complex data sets, and so the basic statistical problems are still relevant, and educating statisticians to work on those types of problems still is important also, I think. Because you don't all have to do the same thing. You don't all have to work on the same type of problems. Artificial intelligence will continue to bring change. It has brought a lot of change already, and it will continue to bring change also in terms of the tasks that we as statisticians do. There are some things that we have done for years that won't be necessary anymore because they can be done through artificial intelligence, and that's what's going to happen. For now, of course, there will be enough opportunity for statisticians because human judgment and human intuition are still very important in making decisions and doing analysis. But there's, for those of you who are interested in chess or in Go, think about IBM's Deep Blue and DeepMind's AlphaZero. There were times where people also said that humans would always be better in those games than computers and artificial intelligence. Well, that's obviously no longer the case. And so that could also be a future for statisticians, that there are lots of opportunities that exist, that won't exist at some point. So let me go back to the need for growth and size. So we need to attract more students and more of the very brightest students. And I think the only way that we can do that, of course, is to make sure that the programs that we offer are really attractive programs. There's no other way that you can attract more students and the brightest students without that. So we need to create a new image, I think, for ourselves of a modern and rapidly changing and adaptable discipline. Again, those are simple words, and it's easy to say that, but to do it, it's another matter. And again, I don't have the answers here. I would love to hear from other people if they have ideas about how to go about this. But we are, again, we don't adapt sufficiently quick to changes, and that needs to change. And yeah, we don't attract enough students to our discipline to really help the discipline to grow. And Xuming's idea, of course, of having statisticians that specialize in certain other areas, I think that's an important aspect of it. So that's one way to grow the statistics community and to have a broader impact by collaboration with other disciplines. And that's an important direction. So I think in part all of this starts out with outreach and how we teach our intro courses. But of course, in spite of all the new challenges and opportunities, success for the discipline will have to be earned, right? And so we need to put in the hard work that is necessary to take advantage of all these opportunities. And it is good to see that a lot of people are working hard on this, and that there are some people who are providing the leadership to guide us in the right direction. But there's a long way to go, I think, before we can really say that we are situated well to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Excellent. A little depressing, but I think another great comprehensive view of the currency of the profession. So there's more. You also get Partha Lahiri, Dr. Partha Lahiri, a professor, as you all know, in the joint program in statistical survey methodology, I apologize, and the Department of Mathematics at the University of Maryland, College Park. He currently serves as the JPSM director. His research interests include data linkages, Bayesian statistics, survey sampling, and small area estimation. Dr. Lahiri has actively contributed to the field by serving on the editorial boards of many international journals and numerous advisory committees. He holds fellowships in the American Statistical Association and the Institute of Mathematical Statistics, and is an elected member of the International Statistical Institute. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to the research applications and education of small area estimation, Dr. Lahiri received the 2020 SAE Award. He is currently serving as the president-elect of the International Association of Survey Statisticians.
Thank you, Jonathan, for a nice introduction. I have some slides here. First of all, great talk, great discussion. Together, I thought we covered many important aspects of statistical research in data science. So I was wondering actually whether I could say anything more. And then I thought, we have many students working in complex data that comes out of complex surveys and official statistical system. So probably I can say something to them, so that they can relate what you said in survey statistics and official statistics. Professor Ha started his talk with challenges and opportunities in statistics and data science, and then how different schools and centers are emphasizing data science, very important, and a few influential papers in statistics. I know about those papers, but it's great to have a list in your slides. Thank you very much. And I will encourage students and young researchers at least have a look at what are there in those very important papers. Professor Ha then discussed in detail various data and research challenges with excellent illustrative example, very nice example, and then talk about practice versus theory, mathematical statistics theory, and leadership and partnership. Finally, Professor Ha discussed important issues like the role of modeling and issues associated with it, explained difference between model-based statistics versus algorithm-based statistics, uncertainty and replicability, etc. Although he didn't get a chance to go into the details of some of the later parts. So what I'll do, I will present a couple of research domains which might be interest to survey statistician and official statistics that will add to your list of 10 important topics. Why I chose these two areas? First area is small area estimation, and then I'll talk about probabilistic record linkage. Why I chose this area? First of all, I know a little bit about this area, so I understand what's going on. The other thing is that these areas you can view as interdisciplinary. Statisticians working definitely, but researchers from other disciplines are also working, like computer science, social sciences, etc. So this research domain could be of interest, where a statistician can build some new methodology in collaboration with others. So I would like to just give a brief, very brief introduction to this area. So what is small area estimation? Now, the national statistical offices, like here in the US Census Bureau, they collect data through sample surveys, complex sample surveys. And the primary goal for all this national sample survey, for instance, is to provide estimates with reliable statistics at the national level or some big area level, like regional level, etc. But survey data is multi-purpose. There are many stakeholders, and some may be interested in producing similar statistics with similar level of precision at a granular level. And this granular level could be geographical level, maybe county level, maybe district level, or maybe municipality level using the same data. Or it could be for different demographic groups that you are interested in, like age, race, etc., etc. So what's the problem here? The problem is if you use this national sample survey data, some of the surveys are really big, produce a lot of data. Like here in the US, we have American Community Survey, and they collect about 3 million addresses annually. It's not a small survey. But even with this big survey data, it is difficult oftentimes to produce estimates at granular level. You may be able to estimate that, but the level of precision will be very low, simply because you don't have enough sample, or sometimes you may not have any sample. And what do you do when you have no sample? You cannot use the traditional method used in sample survey for years. So what kind of choice we have? Well, we have to have more information, okay? One way of thinking about it, what about increasing the sample size? But that doesn't work because we have budget, right? Budget constraint. And as also as Professor Wayne Fuller from Iowa State University said, no matter what you do at the design stage, at the data collection stage, it's not going to help you because there will be more demand for more statistics at more granular level. So you have to do something using some development of statistical methodology. And so here, the notion of using what we may call alternative data set comes in. And this alternative data set can be another survey. It could be administrative record. Now, administrative records are not collected for research purpose initially. But they are there, you're not spending money to collect them. Why not try to use them if we can? And then there are census records, and there are social media data coming all the time, cell phone data, and then various kinds of geospatial data. Can we use it? And here lies the data challenges, many of the data challenges that Xuming talked about. And I won't have time to go into the details, but one thing I would like to say, it is very, very important for statisticians and survey methodologists to understand the process that generates various kinds of data. Because if you understand that, you'll be able to find probably a working model. I'm calling it working model, as Xuming said, all models are wrong, but some are useful, quotations of George Box. But you may be able to build a working model that might be useful for whatever you are interested in, okay? Because those data sets are big. But one of the challenges there, or one of the situations that you have there, in those data sets, typically you don't get the outcome variable that you're interested in. But as long as you have some variable that correlates well with the outcome variable that you collect in survey data, that's all you need. Okay, and there are issues with all this data set that needs statisticians' help to build a model and then to discuss how to do the inference part of it. So here comes in the blended data that John talked about. So how do we combine information from multiple disparate data sources? Okay, that's a challenge. And statisticians, both mathematical statistician and applied statistician, are working on it. And then build statistical inference, which may not necessarily be simple. And finally, in survey and official statistics is very important, not just to quantification of uncertainty, but to evaluate how it is doing when you have some closer approximation of truth is available through, say, census record. That comes once in a while. Okay, now I would like to go to the next page. Another quote from George Box. He says, statisticians, like artists, have the bad habit of falling in love with their models. Okay. While small area researcher indeed develop an affinity for their models, it is crucial to bear in mind George Box's other quotation. I have some extra word, essential. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Okay. As data assume different forms and qualities, and new technologies continue to emerge, the small area estimation landscape remains dynamic and exciting. And as Xuming and also John said, I was also grew up in understanding statistics when you have very simple data, nice rectangular data, no missing values, nothing, right? But now we have challenges, and Xuming talked extensively on that. And so, but I think statisticians have a critical role to play there if we want to do solid inference out of these different disparate databases. So maintaining an open mind in navigating different data situations and methodologies is paramount for progress in the field. So I picked up this small area estimation problem. You see conferences every year. And if you go to one of these conferences, you not only see just statisticians, but people from different disciplines, like economists, sociologists, and now even computer scientists is coming, because they can see that they can contribute to this very important area of research. Small area estimations are used in regional planning, fund allocation, many big problems. And now with this United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 2030, it's even very important for developing country and underdeveloped country. And in those countries, you don't have access to like census data or administrative records because they are very irregular. But now my colleagues in World Bank, they're exploring how to use geospatial data, very big data, like say nighttime light, OpenStreetMap data, and so on. And so this is a very exciting time for small area estimation. Next, I go to probabilistic record linkage. So this is another important topic, interdisciplinary, I would like to call. Statistician played an important role in developing this research area, but computer scientists coming in. Because what we are talking about, we're trying to link multiple databases with millions of records for each one of them, right? Merge the data set to do something. Maybe you're interested in some multivariate analysis, like say factor analysis, okay? Or perhaps you want to improve the estimation, or perhaps you want to study the relationship variable, where some of the variables in one data set, some others in other data set. How to do that? Well, first idea would be to merge, but it's difficult to merge because part of the problem that usually there is no unique identifier like social security number or passport. So what is done there is use what they call matching fields, like last name, first name, phone number, etc. And there are different methods available. One can offer a semester-long course in this thing. One can have a deterministic matching if some of the matching fields match two data sets, then you take it. There are a lot of statistical work one can do. Like when you talk about millions of records, you don't want to consider all possible pairs, right? So there is the understanding of how to form some group. And so within the group, you match. And there is a role of models here. A lot of times mixture models are useful here. But now the question is, can we use some of the models out there, like large language model? Because some of these things are really complicated. When you try to match two last name, for example, how do you do that? Given that you need to have standardization of the name, or maybe address, you have to parse it. And so I think the prospect of emerging data science method could be very useful. And statistician would do a lot of work here. I would like to say something about statistical education. Both Xuming and John touched on it. Curriculum at all levels probably needs to be reviewed and changed if needed more frequently. It's a difficult task, I understand that, but at least one should discuss what can we do to keep up with the changes in the research field. Hands-on experience with big complex data, possibly through internship whenever possible, could be an idea. Some of our students got a lot of benefit out of it. And then introducing emerging topics in data science through seminar courses. A lot of times we have so many topics to cover in a curriculum, we don't have time to cover what's happening in real world. And so, but one can think about some 1 credit hour course or seminar type of course to introduce to the students some new topics that are emerging. Invite researchers from other departments to present their research in statistics seminar. That's also a good idea. Research collaboration, that's very important because many of these research domain comes from other discipline. And so activities through research center, typically in a university you have research center. So actively participating is a good idea, I think. And I think Xuming also talked about that research collaboration between academia, industry, national statistical offices, and international organization would be a good thing, but it's difficult. In the US, there was some effort of doing it by bringing people from academia to spend some time in some of the agencies. That's a very, very good idea. And data sharing poses a lot of challenges because many of this data that we have in survey and official statistics, they are confidential data, and the idea of creating some synthetic data could be the first step, although it doesn't solve the problem. So one idea might be first work on the synthetic data, and if you feel comfortable, give your method or you give your code to the agency to maintain who owns the data to try out there. So that could be one idea. Capacity building, well, there are a lot of new opportunity to capacity building, like webinar or hybrid webinar on modern topics in data science, like the one that we are doing today. In January, we had one in Thailand on geospatial data. So this could reach out to many people in many different countries where they cannot afford to bring speakers to their own country. So this is a very useful way to communicate research. Invite prominent data scientists as keynote speaker in major statistics conferences. I believe it's happening, but I don't keep up with all the programs. Like World Statistics Conference is coming up next year. October this year, sorry, I should know. A joint statistical meeting that we have every year. Organize panel sharing information on different universities are doing in data science research and improving curriculum. May talk about some universities, give a list of universities. Maybe one can organize a panel, but they can talk about what kind of challenge they faced in their own university or institution and share with the others so that they can get some help that might promote this thing. Perhaps International Statistical Association could be more involved in co-sponsoring some local conferences, and that's something IASS is doing. We have a webinar every month on different topics. That's a very good way to communicate research. And here is an interesting quote I found. DJ from David Salzberg is a Connect discussion. Sometime back I saw this one and I found quite interesting. It says DJ Finning once wrote about the statistician whose client comes in and says, "Here is my mountain of trash. Find the gems that lie there." Finney's advice was not to throw him out of the office, but to attempt to find out what he considered gems. After all, if the trained statistician does not help, he'll find someone who will. So the basic idea is that don't afraid of the data. Statistician should be more involved in understanding the data so that they can solve some problem. So when you have a big data, we may not want to work on it, but maybe some of the modern techniques in machine learning and AI would help extract the information that you need to solve some of the problems. With that, I'd like to thank our speakers, Xuming and John Stufken, and last but not the least, Jonathan, to coordinate all these things. Thank you so much. And what we can do now, I thought maybe I can do this question and answer session because I have the computer here. Somebody may put questions from remote side. So from the remote side, if you have any question, please post your question in the Q&R box, okay, that you find in your screen, and we'll try to answer some of the questions. The question can be for the speakers or the discussant. Okay, with that, I would like to give you some time to think about the question. If you have some question here for our distinguished speaker or the distinguished discussion, not me, you can ask. Feel free to ask. Okay. And you have from any question from this room? Do you get any question from it? Not here. Probably it's so comprehensive and covered it so well. Nobody has any question. Yeah.
I have some comments from
Yeah.
the online side. Say very outstanding and makes sense to the average staff person.
We ask.
So all of them have questions.
So we received some very, very nice comments. I'll read out some of them. Mary is commenting outstanding and makes sense to average staffers. Without any formula. Well, you have one formula. Again, very informative, bond with AI and not run away from it. Okay. And another comment is great high-level summary. So I think overall it's very informative. And,
I have a question. What role do academic journals play? Like statistical journals play in this vision, or it sounds like in statistics catching up to other disciplines?
Me too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, either.
Maybe I just go there so people can hear. So one question is the role that statistical journals can play. I think it's a great question. I personally feel like we need journals of diverse characteristics. So currently, depending on whom you talk to, like if you talk to people in academia, they tend to focus very narrowly on a few journals. And well, these are usually the top leading journals in our field. But the issue is that those journals have very limited capacity, so it can publish only a certain number of articles. And also those journals are pretty much run by the community because they have to go through a very rigorous review process. So if the reviewers don't like what you do, even if your paper is very innovative, you may not get accepted. Now, most journals, including the one that I'm currently one of the joint editor for the Journal of Royal Statistical Society Series B, the acceptance rate right now is very, very low. I want to give you the number. Why? Because certain number of papers can be published each year, but more and more people are submitting. And this is not unique to that journal. Like many journals have very low acceptance rate. So I feel like as a field, we need to think about broadening what we do. So in fact, ASA, I know American Statistical Association, is doing, I think, that in bringing new journals online as well as new journals to be developed. For example, there was imaging-related journals. Right? I know ASA has already decided to start a new journal called ASA Discovery. So I think with new journals from reputable societies to focus on different aspects of statistics and data science, gradually I think we will be able to kind of reach out more and appreciate the different type of work that people do. So my advice is that keep your eyes open. And also, as John mentioned earlier, that maybe reach out to journals outside our own discipline. Now that of course requires that you work with, very often requires that you work with others, right? So it's kind of a natural step for you to collaborate with people outside our discipline. And then you do more impactful work. That one big challenge, I think, for younger statisticians in academia is the evaluation system. Right? If the departments or senior colleagues or the universities don't recognize some of the publications outside the core or the top journals of your field, then we won't be able to go very far. How do we change that perception and practice? We need more and more people in the community to build consensus. And I think we are moving in the right direction. Like compared to some years ago, the whole field is moving in the right direction, but a lot more needs to be done. I often worry that if we are too slow, I don't know, whether we will be losing a lot of talent in the research community to other fields, to industry, where they don't tie their evaluation so much to just journal publications. So I'm hoping that people publish a lot in the top journals, they will be recognized and respected still, but people publishing in interdisciplinary journals and other outlets, as long as they are doing good impactful work, will be equally recognized. Then our field can grow.
I have some comment about that. It's a very good question. I was thinking of putting it on my slide. What I find out that compared to other disciplines, it takes a long time to publish paper in a good statistical journal. And that's a problem, because if you have new ideas and you had to wait for 2 years to publish in a good journal, that's not good. So maybe one should have a journal where you quickly publish the ideas and the mathematical details can follow another paper or someone else can do it. That's one idea, I think. And I understand in many of the disciplines like engineering, computer science, they value proceedings of some big conferences. And they actually don't accept all the abstracts submitted. You submit the abstract and then you accept or reject the abstract, and that's like a publication. But in statistics, traditionally, we don't do that. And that's something that statisticians, maybe the administrators in the department or university can think of.
Please, I want to ask.
Jan,
Sorry.
Thank you for the very informative and insightful talk. I'm Yan Li, faculty member in JPSM and about that. Yeah, and I really appreciate that you introduced the 7 areas. And it's quite interesting. And for the very first area, which is data heterogeneity, right? Heterogeneity. And I like your comments on this area for this current political environment. So nowadays people talk about health disparity, those things. And currently in terms of grant or publication, and do you think it will be affected for the short term, say 2 years, 3 years? And I know people are kind of nervous about this. So I'd like your comments on this.
Yeah. Since it's recorded, I have to be a little bit careful. So the question is about, say, health equity and disparity, that kind of research, right? And that's part of data heterogeneity that I was talking about, right? I feel like certainly we need to be concerned with all the current kind of political environment, but statisticians, what we do is usually not tied to a particular phrase or a particular keyword. So the methodology of research we do can apply to many other things with similar models, similar theoretical underpinnings, similar methodology development. So in that sense, I feel like I'm optimistic that as long as you may have to change a few keywords in your proposal or in your research article, but you can do the same research. Instead of say health disparity for underrepresented groups. You know, maybe you are doing it for people, low-income families or people who don't have access to certain healthcare, of certain type. You just have to make sure that you choose the keywords right, so that you won't be screened out by all these AI tools, right? But the methodology research, I think, what we do is not tied to any particular keyword. That's my optimistic view. That we probably won't be too much.
Thank you.
So I think it's okay to talk about diversity, for example. There are certain words that are off limits, but you still can talk about heterogeneity and diversity.
Right. Sometimes it's
that's
not avoidable. You have to make some like a public health, like impact, and to make like a group difference research or like that. It's unavoidable.
Like a personalized medicine, personalized treatment, that's still all right. And that's,
Yeah.
so I think that there are ways around it. That's a good thing, that what we do is so general, broadly applicable.
Thank you.
I see a couple of comments. Someone writing from Uganda. This was a wonderful seminar for me, listening to different interests about statistics, and we call for more collaboration, R&D to diversify our impact to livelihoods. That's a comment. And there is another one. We have to use all mediums of data literacy, blogs, abstracts, webinars at all levels to people who don't know stats, to senior staff in the field, tenure professors. We need to make stats sexy again, or appealing, and maybe AI to elevate it. There's a couple of comments. I have one comment for you, a more concrete kind of step one can probably take. Suppose a statistician in a traditional stat department or math department interested to contribute what's happening in data science and AI world. And one of the things that I think would be good to see where to get the data, and that brings in collaboration, I guess, right? I mean, collaborate with some industry which are very interested in solving some problem, or maybe the government agency, right? But how to make that happen? This is a problem, I think. Do you have any experience with this kind of how to promote research on AI or data science among statisticians sitting in the math department or stat department, or a program like ours?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, of course, is to kind of talk to the senior faculty. I mean, this is particularly for junior faculty, I think, right? To talk to senior faculty in the same university, maybe the same department. And very often, they can point you to certain directions. There are the groups of people on campus you can collaborate with. But I also recognize sometimes senior faculty are not good role models because they don't reach out very broadly across campus. So in that way, I feel like even before you go to a university, accept their jobs, when you are being interviewed at that stage, you should ask this question. Do people in that program or in that department work with others? And what other programs on campus that are natural collaborators? So if there's a tradition already there, you can see that. That's very helpful. It might be much easier for a junior faculty, for a new faculty member to start this kind of collaborations. I know most universities at the higher level, they encourage interdisciplinary research a lot.
Right.
So sometimes if you cannot get help from your own colleagues in the department, you should really go out to talk to people in other departments, or maybe even at the school level, the college level, to get more guidance to begin with. I know it will take at least a year or two, usually much longer, to build successful collaborations. But if you keep trying, you can be successful. If you just shy away from it, say, okay, if one first experiment did not turn out to be very successful, and then you just say, okay, stay away from it, then you will never be successful. So it takes some persistence and takes initiative, I think. In today's environment, I think in most research places, you'll be able to find collaborators who want to work with you.
And participating in the research centers, at least for me, was very helpful.
Yeah.
Because there you get to know faculty, postdoc, students working in this kind of problem, which needs big data.
I mean, John mentioned a very good point is to go to other conferences.
Yeah.
Of course, you need to go to workshops in your own area for sure, but very often some other broad theme conferences are very helpful. Now you have to choose them right. That's a difficult question, I guess, for most junior people, which workshop or conference you attend. But broader understanding of what other people are doing, really, really helpful.
Okay, you have a question, Nicholas?
Yes, please. I have enjoyed the presentations. It made me appreciate them more. What our faculty here is teaching us at JPSM, because most of the stuff like causal inference, the classical and the model-based approach to inference are things that they've touched upon. And so I'm really able to relate them and connect them in a way. But what I want to ask is, from your personal experience, having obtained your PhD in the early 1980s, and then looking at how the trend in terms of data science is going, sometimes it deviates from mathematics, statistics to, say, machine learning, which is more computer science based. How do you remain, at the front, or you still remain relevant in what is going on without having to change your focus?
To me, the others will have different experience. To me, the key is to keep an open mind and talk to other people, collaborate with other people. I think I learned a lot from working with others. Some in statistics, obviously, but many outside the field. Those collaborations really, especially when I was younger, kind of opened my eyes to the world beyond the traditional statistical research. If you only talk to people who are similar to yourself, you may not have that experience, and maybe it's harder to adapt. I don't know whether, John, you have a different experience.
I think there's always a danger that you're good at certain things, you're trained in certain ways, that you stick to those things, right? And if you do that, then it doesn't take very long until you're really behind. So you have to make changes, and I think some of those changes come through interacting with junior people, actually. New people that come into a department, they bring new ideas. They're trained in different ways. Their focus is different. And I think you can learn a lot from that as a more senior person to interact with junior people. And yeah, you constantly have to learn new things. I mean, that's a given.
One thing I would like to say, one of the challenges in interdisciplinary research is to understand each other's language. That takes a long time. So you may say precision, and some other researcher in some other discipline may interpret it in a different way. So I think it takes time to do good interdisciplinary research, but at the end of the day, if you stick to it, I think you get a lot of benefit.
I mean, the good thing is statistics and also statisticians, I think in general, very well appreciated outside our field. And especially for those areas who deal with data, they know they don't know enough statistics to do what they need to do. And when you work with them, as long as you don't try to be arrogant and all that, you try to be collaborative, you learn from them, but I also find that they also want to learn from you. So that leads to those good collaborations, quite, I think, in my experience, very present, and we should all, think about doing that, talking to people outside the field of statistics. Okay, but you're right, it takes time to understand the languages, and we talk about sample, and the sample means different things to different people. And so you need to work with a group of people focused in certain area for a little while, right? You cannot shift all the time. I mean, you have to be becoming a little expert in certain areas before you can make an impact.
Okay, any other question? It's about 11:45, discussed a lot.
Okay.
Thank you so much for attending here and also online. If you have any questions, you can send to the organizer, Lucy. He'll be able to forward to one of us. So I think before concluding, I would like to thank the speaker, Xuming, and John, and also Jonathan, for conducting this session. And with that, we conclude. Thank you. So we have,
You check your parking. Mine's right.
Next to the parking.
Yeah, me too.